a little bit. You talked about primary prevention, which is sunscreen, stay out of the sun. We will cover that topic a little bit later. And let's talk about secondary prevention, that is screening, looking at patients. And I'm really delighted to sort of asking you about the ABCDs of melanoma, because you and Dr. Alkaf, who was my mentor and started early on, you guys, the ones who did the initial study and came up with the acronym, right? And maybe you can just tell us what the ABCD stand for, and maybe you can give us some interesting anecdote about how you guys come up with this acronym.
Well, sure. My late colleague Bob Friedman and I, we were junior faculty at the time. This was 1984, so it's a long time ago. And we were sitting in the NYU dermatology library and trying to figure out a way, how could we describe early melanoma to non-dermatologists? So we went and got slides, Kodachrome slides of about 20 early melanomas, and brought them to senior faculty at the time and showed them to it, say, what is this? And they'd say melanoma. And if you asked why, the answer invariably was because it looks like one.
Yeah.
And it is kind of a gestalt thing if you've seen enough of them. But the trick was, we wanted people who weren't super experienced. How could we teach them what to look for? So we decided it had to be as easy as the ABC. And we came up with A for asymmetry. And typically early melanomas, one side doesn't look like the other. You can't really draw a line down the difference. And that's because there's differential growth that occurs. B was for border, irregular border. Most moles are kind of have a clear-cut border. Melanomas may have an indistinct or a jagged, irregular border. C was for color. Typically, most moles are solid in color, but melanomas have different shades of browns. And if you get further along the line, it's a very patriotic disease. You see reds, whites, and blues with it, as you see various things with it as it gets more advanced. We wanted to catch it when it was early. So we actually went down the hall and spoke to our mentor and your mentor, Al Koff, and said, what do you think of this? And he goes, well, you got to have a size criteria because everybody will run in with real little things. So we looked at the NYU database at that time, and 95% of the lesions in the database were greater than 6 millimeters or a quarter of an inch. So that's where the diameter of the size of a pencil eraser, a quarter of an inch, et cetera, 6 millimeters came in. And to that, about 20 years later, we added E because evolving and change is important too. We actually went through the entire alphabet, Steve, and X was tough. X was X-ray resistant, but we got them all. And but I think it has to be easy, and the ABCDs have really, to me, have been very exciting because I know it's been translated to many languages. I've been in, when we first came out with these. Two good stories. One is, I can tell you, we got letters before emails, letters from people thanking us for their early detection. They came into NYU. And my own mother, and this is a true story, my mother was blonde, blue-eyed, very fair, and spent a lot of time out in the sun and was living in Arizona. And I sent her a copy of the article when it came out in CA. And she called me and said, I got this spot on my arm that looks a little bit like one of these pictures.
Wow.
She went to see the University of Arizona, went in and had a biopsy. It was a 0.1 millimeter melanoma. So she lived another 40 years. That was pretty good. But, so I even saved my own mother's life with that. That's a true story. And
well, I think the ABCDs have saved a lot of lives. I mean, I think this is the first, when I learned about melanoma many, many years ago in med school, that was the first thing that was taught to the medical student, right? And it is one of the very catchy acronyms that have definitely used very widely and successfully for public health messagings. And I think over the years, the ABCDs of melanoma was very good detecting large melanoma, but now we are able to detect smaller and smaller melanoma that still, does not fit some of the criteria, but it's very, very useful. And